Good morning. You're off the beaten trail with Edward. Today taking a look at this spot right here in this little field next to this little home here, well worn. It didn't look like that back in the day. We're going to talk about this spot right here and what happened to one of my friends. We're going to go visit him here in a second. Be right back. Well, I'm back with you here to continue our story of a little home that you just seen in the video and a little grassy yard next to it. It's where the accident took place. We'll talk about that here in a second. I'm standing here in the Alamo Center Cemetery near Alamo, Michigan. The accident happened to a good friend of mine. His name was JD. He was a graduate of the ITT Technical School and a businessman, owned and operated his own commercial print shop. Knew him for years. He was a sportsman, married. His wife had 3 children. He's a good father. He was a good guy. Very resourceful. He repaired everything that he owned, practically. All of his printing presses and binder equipment, his own vehicles. He was only about 5'8", 5'9". One, as they call it, a buck and a quarter. Very wiry. Good guy. So one day, nearby where he lived, I just showed you the home, is a ski area known as Timber Ridge, and they were going to put in some new ski lanes, and a logger was going to come in and do some logging, and the treetops were up for grabs. And so JD, being resourceful and really an entrepreneur, he decided, I'm going to take those tops. And he talked to the people at Timber Ridge, and they said, this is a 2-year program. You have to have them out of here in this time. And so JD agreed, and he found another commercial printer that wasn't as busy and turned accounts over to him. And he started preparing equipment and so forth to go and get all those tops, hundreds of them, bring them over to his property. He bought chainsaws, he bought a big log splitter, and lastly he bought a 1970s vintage military 6x6 known as a 5-ton. And this big truck, 6-wheel drive, had a dump truck body on it. Exactly what he needed. One of his neighbors seen it sitting in his driveway and had worked on trucks like that and even heavier equipment in the military, and introduced himself, and the two of the guys decided that that was going to be a partnership and they're going to start tree topping. JD called me up one day and he says, you got to come over, man, and take a ride in my new truck. So I went out there, and there's this big army truck, and I says, well, I'll be darned. And he gave me a ride in it through that field that was just behind there of his house. Wasn't long. They were up taking a load out from the ski area, and he heard a noise underneath the truck. And so they had unloaded, and they came back to that little field there next to his house. And he decided that he was going to hang underneath the vehicle and see if he could hear where that noise was coming from. While his partner slowly drove, just was creeping along in that flat, was a cut soybean field. Talking to his partner not long after, he told me that he heard a thump, and he stopped and he called out for JD and he didn't hear anything. And so, to make a long story short, he got out, he looked around, JD wasn't there. He thought he was playing tricks on him, hiding behind the truck. So he walked around the vehicle and JD was nowhere to be found, so he looked back underneath the vehicle and there was JD wrapped around the drive shaft. And I know a lot more details than that, and I'm not going to go into them. I was a pallbearer at his funeral, right here in the cemetery. There are many things written online on the internet back in the day about JD and his accident and other things that just didn't add up. Those people didn't know him, and they made it sound like that this was something that a total fool would have done. JD was no fool, and the speed was very slow. His partner never would have done it any other way, and it was determined after everything was said and done that it's just a terrible accident. Happened to a great guy, and there's just nothing else that can be said about it other than the hearts going out to his mother and his brother and his wife and the kids. And I come out here at least once a year, come by and visit my old buddy. Happened back in 1995. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Mr. J.D. Burns. There's quite a fella right there. And with that, I thank you for being with me today. A little walk through some personal history of a good friend in a terrible accident. It is a very quiet cemetery here. Older graves going back into the days of the Civil War near the front of the cemetery. I always like to stop by here and look at this anvil as well. Mr. R.N. Norton. For the size cemetery that this is, it's amazing how many of the zinc alloy markers are here. 1, there's 2, there's 3 just right there within sight. With that, I leave you here, thanking you again for being with me. If you like this video, I sure appreciate it if you would subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. I'll keep doing my best to bring videos to you that are interesting and out of the way. And there are more about to be produced, so please keep your eye on Off the Trail with Edward, and have a great day.